Deja vu maybe, but this is the third corrosion protection video I've done with 23 products tested, and now we're going to find out if ceramics are really worth it. Combined with the data I got from the previous 2 tests, we can rank a total of 33 different rust proofers. I asked YouTube viewers, our Bike Club forum and Bike Social Facebook group what they wanted to see tested. So some of the products here include fluid film, LPS3, Waxoil, Lanoguard, as well as XCP, ACF50, WD-40 and many more. Plus, and perhaps most interestingly, those ceramic coatings. Now we're looking for the best protection against corrosion for motorcycles here, but it's likely to be just as useful for those wanting a rust inhibitor for cars too. Challenge yourself. Before we get started, tell me in the comments what out of this lot you think will be the best and worst, then at the end, tell me if you were right. First of all, what is corrosion? I talked to Professor Bob Eden, founder and managing director of Raw Water, with a master's degree and doctorate in corrosive science and engineering. He works with multinational companies and has even been involved with projects like the conservation of a 1923 Dot motorcycle at the Manchester Museum of Science and Industry. He worked with Simon Kane to perfectly preserve that bike, stabilising the existing corrosion to leave it frozen in time as part of a Stop the Rot exhibition. I asked him what we're looking for in rust prevention, and he told me that corrosion takes place in wet environments when corrosion protection measures are absent, or if they fail. Salty solutions make matters worse since they speed up the corrosion process, but what aqueous corrosion mechanisms have in common is metal loss, a process that takes place at the anode and a chemical reaction at the cathode. Anodes generate electrons that are consumed at the cathode in the exact same proportion. He told me there are many different ways to inhibit corrosion, from barrier chemistry to anodic inhibitors, cathodic inhibitors, passivators and more, so we need to test them. Now then, it's important to understand that the results of this test are based on the methods I'm going to show you. It's not a lab test, but it does bear a lot of similarity to the ASTM B-117 salt spray test. In the last video I had sample plates hanging in a box in my fairly temperature controlled shed, but the salt spray made my lathe go rusty and I lost a load of space in there for 7 months. This time I made this enclosed unit that would keep the weather off, but the temperature fluctuated a lot more, getting down to freezing and up to almost 50 degrees C. And that does mean that the results don't directly match the previous test. This was faster, but they are comparable as I've included many of the benchmark ones from before. The point is that this includes the best of the last tests and many new products which have all undergone the same conditions. So as with any lab test, the results allow us to compare performance. This should be a lot faster than real life. So I cut, shaped and drilled mild steel plates, which I then cleaned thoroughly to ensure they were completely bare. Then I applied each product exactly as the instructions stated and immediately fixed them into the test tank. Some of them were sprayed on, some of them were wiped on and some even airbrushed. Now all the plates were set to 45 degrees to represent an average of vertical and horizontal surfaces on the bike, and a lot of them did run off a bit while I left them for 2 days in the tank to fully go off, but that's real life. And then the testing started. Once a day from the start of September 2024, every plate was sprayed with a 5% road salt solution, and every weekend the plates were taken out of the tank to be rinsed clean. And thanks to having an old GoPro recording time-lapse video, we can see exactly what happened. Let's stop already. After 2 days we've got corrosion on 7 of the plates. These 2 are the bare steel controls, but then we've got the Muc-Off ceramic that I wiped on and airbrushed, the Rokit Duracell ceramic spray, and doing best, but still starting to go, is the Ulti-Moto professionally applied ceramic coating. Now this one over here is the Nasiol metal guard, which is described as a nano coating and seems a lot like a ceramic. I cleaned and prepped the surfaces as directed, but it didn't work here. So those ceramics. Before starting this test, I approached 2 well-known companies that offer ceramic protection for motorcycles, asking if I could go to them and have a plate coated. It'd take them 5 minutes. One of them said they didn't have time, and the other told me the test wasn't relevant. But then I heard that Ulti-Moto, a supplier of professionally applied ceramics for big brands like McLaren and Williams, was launching a motorcycle brand called Ulti-Moto, and Division Director Steve Keys said he'd be happy to have their product tested, which is why it's in here as he applied it. Now the Rokit one's also based on this product, but it's got less ceramic in it and it's easier to apply. I asked Steve before the test if ceramics would prevent rust.
The answer, and the simple answer for me, is no. It's certainly not designed to do that.
Yeah.
Will it have some effect? I don't think it's going to have a huge effect. I'm really looking forward to finding out the answer.
Yeah.
But we would never sell it or promote it on that basis.
Steve was here to apply the Ulti-Moto to one of the plates and also left the Rokit ceramic spray, which I put on my car's bonnet back at the end of July 2024. After properly cleaning and claying it, I divided it into 4 sections with one bare, the Muc-Off ceramic coating, the Rokit ceramic spray and Colonite, my favourite wax. And we'll come back to that later in this video. Now before we see what happens with the corrosion test, I just need to stress that this video isn't sponsored and that I don't do affiliate content or anything like that. I'm paid by Bennett's to make stuff that we hope helps you get more from motorcycling, and by being totally unbiased and independent, builds trust in our brand. Bennett's has been insuring motorcycles for more than 90 years, and a good while ago it decided that, rather than spend a large chunk of its marketing budget on putting ads on other websites and in magazines, the company would have its own small editorial team. If watching this video makes you consider Bennett's when it's next time to insure your bike, and if it helps you see all the benefits like most standard modifications being included, 90 days of EU cover, and a UK-based claims team, not to mention Bike Social membership, which you get for free if you insure your bike direct with Bennett's, then everyone's happy. That membership is well worth having, with hundreds of exclusive competitions, experiences and discounts like 15% off everything at Performance Parts or 10% off at Ulti-Moto. The point is, my wages don't depend on any brand sponsoring me. It makes no odds to me at all whether you buy or use anything in this video or any other. So, off we go again. We did have a jump there from day 8 to day 12 as my wife unplugged the power lead to mow the lawn and forgot to put it back so the GoPro died. But we've lost Oxford, which did seem to run off a fair bit when applied to the 45-degree plate, and Würth. WD-40 is on its way out and Ballistol is showing signs of failing too. Now the Ulti-Moto professional coating did the best out of the ceramics, but like all of them, it's still no corrosion protectant. 20 days in and Ballistol's gone and Bulldog is on its way. Now this is still doing better than the WD-40 down here, and in the previous tests it proved to be a very good all-purpose spray. I still use it for general lubrication and I really like it. Carbon Collective is going and the Bow Shield T9's pretty much done now. We can also see a little bit of edge corrosion on the XCP Clear Coat Aerosol and the XCP Rust Blocker Spray, and there's light corrosion across the plate on the ACF 50. 31 days of testing in this closed box, which has been heat cycling through a hot August 2024, and ACF 50 is done. Alphalan's on its way out, Carbon Collective is done, Fluid Film's going, S100's on the way out, and the Techcote ACS 200 is degrading faster than I expected, as that did really well in the test a few years ago. Remember though that this is a form of HALT, highly accelerated life testing, and as close as I could get to a proper spray tank test that labs do. I did get quotes for having this done in a lab and it would have taken just days, but it was way too expensive. The point is, this gives us a comparison of products based on the test criteria you can see here. Now previous winners XCP Rust Blocker and Clear Coat are holding on, with just some corrosion appearing at the edges, and Dr. Downpipe, Waxoil, Lanoguard, LPS3 and Muc-Off are doing great still. Halfway through the second month and we've only got Dr. Downpipe, Waxoil, Lanoguard, LPS3, Muc-Off HC B-1 and the XCPs left in the game. Right, we've done 2 full months now and there are clearly some winners coming through in this part. XCP has stood its ground against everything it beat in the previous test, so while it's failing more quickly in this tank, the results are consistent and it's not fully gone yet. Muc-Off HC B-1 is impressive when you look back at how utterly hopeless its motorcycle protectant was before, but the Waxoil and LPS3 are doing brilliantly. Dr. Downpipe is on its way out and Lanoguard is showing signs of failing. After 3 months, the Muc-Off HC B-1 is gone. Interestingly, while they're well on the way, the XCP Rust Blocker applied from the aerosol is still trying to fight, and the Clear Coat applied out of the spray bottle is hanging in valiantly too. Dr. Downpipe has let go as well. This is 3.5 months in, coming up to Christmas 2024, and the little clock's packed up because it's so cold. Dr. Downpipe and the XCP clear coat from the spray bottle are just hanging in, with the Lanoguard close behind, but Waxoil and LPS3 are clearly standing out. Just jumping in quickly here, the clear coat on test is a new formula, which is said to last longer, and that's why it seems to be performing as well as the older rust blocker. And that's it. After just over 4.5 months, I stopped the test in January 2025, and Waxoil and LPS3 have won the corrosion protection test. Or at least this part of it, because there's more we need to know. And that test narrowed it down to 12 products that could be potentially good rust proofers, so I sprayed them into these lids with samples of polycarbonate and acrylic, both with screws in to act as stress risers, and a chain O-ring. And this is more of that highly accelerated life testing, but it's important because there are so many delicate surfaces on a bike. So a big thanks then to Rally Raid for supplying the lids from their sister company Mazplast Mouldings, Skid Marks for the acrylic samples, and Hoko Parts for the EK motorcycle chain O-rings. Only the Muc-Off HC B-1 caused a small amount of swelling on the O-ring, all of the others were fine. Now some chemicals can cause long-term harm to rubber, so though this was very minor swelling, it's worth noting. The LPS3 caused damage to the acrylic, with cracks forming around the stress riser. This is significant because it shows that there's potential for harm to some of the plastics that could be used on a bike. As well as testing those 12 for material compatibility, I also cut 12 new steel plates, cleaned them and weighed them, coated them with each product and left them to dry for 2 days, then weighed them again. At this point we can see what they look like. An Alphalan, fluid film and LPS3 all look way too nasty for me to put on my bike, so they're eliminated, along with Lanoguard, which stays looking quite thick. XCP Rust Blocker has a bit of a brown tinge that can be noticeable where it builds up in nooks and crannies if you put it on too thick, but it's okay, and besides, the corrosion test shows that the new formula of XCP Clear Coat can perform pretty much as well, and that looks very good. Waxoil looks great in these clips, though it has a very matte finish, which I only noticed when I sprayed it onto my GS rear wheel. Here, I don't like it. The others, that don't look all manky, leave a nicer gloss finish and are also easier to wipe down after spraying. On the flip side, you can see from this pic how the Waxoil sticks to the plate and doesn't run off at all. Look at the puddles under the others where the excess has dripped. Maybe worth mentioning is that the HC B-1 has a UV dye in it that glows under UV light, so you can see where it's applied. A neat trick, but I don't think many people will use it. Dr. Downpipe has a slightly more waxy look to it than some of the others here, with a fractional yellow tinge, but it's not excessive. Next, I stood those plates on a rack and sieved fine sand over them until they were covered, tapped the excess off and weighed them again. This gave me a guide to how sticky they were through the percentage of sand retained. The fluid film was the worst here at 5.61%, with Waxoil the best at an excellent 0.04%, closely followed by LPS3, but we've already decided that that one looks horrible. Of the other best performers in the corrosion test, XCP Rust Blocker just beat Muc-Off HC B-1, which was slightly better than Dr. Downpipe. XCP Clear Coat edged ahead of them. ACF 50 did well in this test, but it stays quite liquid and is significantly outperformed by the others in the corrosion testing. If you're willing to keep reapplying it more regularly, it does tend to look good. Next, I rinsed the plates gently with the shower setting on the hose, then left them to dry naturally. We've got some negative numbers here, but that's just because some of the products were washed off a little too. Fluid film became the best, for instance, but like the LPS3, it looks horrible, and it was far from the best in the corrosion testing. The key rust proofers that we're interested in by now are XCP Clear Coat, Waxoil, XCP Rust Blocker, Muc-Off HC B-1 and Dr. Downpipe. Finally, I hosed the plates off with the fan pattern spray, which is what I was using every weekend during the corrosion testing and is more powerful. Fluid film was still losing more of itself, hence getting lighter, but it remains 0.12% heavier than before it was coated. None of them are really bad for stickiness at this point, though I would say that the Waxoil seems to look the best. Dr. Downpipe and Muc-Off seem to be a fraction more sticky than the XCP Clear Coat, though there's not a great deal in it. So Waxoil wins, right? Well, hang on a second. The corrosion testing method showed that the best products don't just rinse off to leave your bike unprotected, but you do also want to be able to clean them away at some point. Most corrosion protectants that do a good job might hang on to a bit of dirt in some situations, so a thorough clean will probably be necessary once or twice a year. To test this, I cleaned out the pots that I did the material compatibility testing in. First, I shook them out into the bin. Then I hosed them with the fan pattern, and that got a lot of excess out, apart from Waxoil, which looked exactly the same. Then I sprayed a large amount of XCP cleaner and degreaser into each pot, all around the sides and enough to fully cover the bottom. Now I used this as in the cleaners test linked up here. It was material safe, excellent value, and did a very good job. Might it favour XCP's corrosion protectants? I doubt it, but it's not an issue really anyway, as they all cleaned up pretty well with just Alphalan, Lanoguard, LPS3 and XCP rust blocker, leaving a bit around the sides. Muc-Off's HC B-1 left a little in there, but nothing much really. Those would all have cleaned up with some agitation, but Waxoil hadn't budged. It looked exactly the same. So then I sprayed degreaser into the Waxoil pot, and it didn't budge. Then I sprayed it again and scrubbed at it with a brush. The grease in the brush came out, but the Waxoil wouldn't budge. It still looked exactly the same. This stuff is tough, so as well as leaving a not too great matte finish on anything you spray it onto, it really doesn't want to come off. Leaving it to soak in the degreaser for several days kind of slightly softened it, but it didn't dissolve. It still looks very thick and I can't get it out. I really can't recommend Waxoil for motorcycle use, as it doesn't look great and it won't come off. I would put it under the car though, or the LPS3, which did even better in the corrosion test. They're both still going, but it looks horrible and wasn't completely plastic safe. Okay, it should be pretty clear that we have some recommendeds based on this testing. Of the ones not in this video that I've done before and you might be wondering about, GT85 was even worse than WD-40. It did pretty much nothing, just like Motorex Motor Protect and Muc-Off's old motorcycle protectant. Oh, and olive oil, which someone suggested. One that I should mention is Scottoiler FS 365. Spray it on once and it doesn't last long at all, but it's designed to be sprayed on after every ride, which rinses off the salt and leaves a light oily barrier that comes off easily with water. If you use it as intended, it's actually pretty effective, but it is a lot of work, and most people will be looking for something they can spray on and forget. So in this one, Waxoil's out of the game, leaving Dr. Downpipe, Muc-Off's new HC B-1 and the two XCPs. All of them earn their place as Bike Social recommended products, with a slight note of caution about the O-ring swelling in the Muc-Off. S100, Techcote and ACF 50 can also keep the recommendations they earned in the last test. If we look at value, you can see how they all compare and decide which is right for you. But really, I do all of this just so I can work out what I'm going to put on my bike. And while I'm particularly impressed with the Dr. Downpipe, it's the XCP Clear Coat that I choose. It's completely material safe, it looks slightly better on the bike, it's not too sticky, and it does a good job of protecting against corrosion. It's also really easy to apply from the can, but most importantly, you can get it in a bottle to spray through a compressor. Now this is the deal breaker for me, as once a year I do a really thorough clean and put this on with a paint gun. I usually just put sheets over the wheels to protect the tyres and brakes, but I had them out anyway when I was doing this. By getting a cloud of the clear coat in all the gaps in the panels and around the engine, it reaches deep inside the bike to the areas you can't reach with just an aerosol. And a bottle of clear coat works out at £31.88 a litre, and it lasts absolutely ages as you only use a tiny amount in the paint gun. Then after any other good clean, I just give the bike a spray with the aerosol to top up the most exposed areas. Now I know this is a bit of a commitment, but it doesn't take long at all, and the compressor was cheap from Aldi. Plus it's useful for other jobs, so worth the commitment. So that's the end of the third corrosion protection test, except I do need to add some in. While talking to Dr. Bob Eden, he explained that although barrier products will protect steel and aluminium from corrosion in a similar way, any products relying on chemical mitigation processes would not necessarily work as well on both materials. The stuff I've tested here does seem to create a barrier, but I still need to do more testing, as while steel protection is important, so is aluminium on a bike. For that reason, I'm about to run another test over several more months to see if anything changes. Make sure you hit subscribe to catch that. Ceramics could make up a huge video in themselves, so though I don't want this to get too long, we do need to talk about them. Now keeping in mind that there are several different products out there of course, Steve from Ulti-Moto was the only one willing to talk openly about what his company, which works with some big names, believes ceramics can do.
It's a paint protection system, and it's designed specifically to work and be really effective on water-based paint systems, which is what modern motorcycles are painted with.
Ceramic coatings fill in the microscopic peaks and troughs of paint, leaving a hard outer coating, but it's not a miracle worker. It doesn't repair scratches, for instance. Any paint it's put onto needs to be totally clean, but also in good condition. Ceramics protect the existing finish, but can they protect against new scratches and stone chips?
No. The short answer is, if you've got a stone coming at your bike, anything over 30, 40 mile an hour, and possibly even below that, it's going to chip it. It's not a chip protecting system. It's there to protect the finish of your paintwork. You can still scratch it. You know, if you've got metal, a ring or whatever on, you can still scratch your paintwork. I think fundamentally the most important and valuable reason for putting ceramic on your bike is that when you then clean it, you won't be damaging it. Because you're going to use a polish otherwise. Every time you use a polish, you damage your paintwork. You use our ceramic and our rapid clean system, you're not damaging it. You're locking in that finish.
The gist is that ceramic coatings can protect the finish of the paint on your motorbike or car, but they're not suitable for high temperature areas and they don't prevent corrosion. If you're treating a tank that has a chip out of it, touch in the bare metal first and ideally machine polish it to make it less visible. Paint itself prevents corrosion, but ceramics over damaged paint won't stop rust forming. Now, Ulti-Moto can only be professionally applied, and you'll likely find some main dealers starting to offer it as a service, especially on new bikes. The paint surface has to be perfect. It's prepped with a strong cleaner first, then the ceramic has to be applied evenly and out of sunlight, as that would make it harden too quickly and leave a ropey finish that would be very hard to fix. So are all ceramic coatings the same?
From my perspective, so I'm not saying I know everything about ceramics, no one does. But when I came into the market a few years ago, I realised that most of the other people use a non-modified car product. So they tend to be, and I know this sounds like a contradiction, too hard for a motorcycle. Basically, the motorcycles vibrate a lot of the plastic panels move a lot, and we also have a lot of matte as well as gloss finish paintwork. So ours, we've developed it to have a bit more flex in it. It's only minimal, but it's enough to stop any micro cracking, and therefore the product lasts a bit longer. But it also is like a chameleon style ceramic, so it will mimic what's underneath it. So if you put it onto a matte finish, it will give a matte finish. If you put it onto gloss, it will give a gloss finish. Okay, so all we've done is take what we knew, as far as ceramic was concerned, take what I kind of knew in the motorcycle market and where the potential pitfalls were, combine that knowledge and came up with a new Ulti-Moto ceramic system.
So how many places are there actually making the ceramic? Are you all buying it from the same supplier?
We may be buying the actual ceramic that goes into the chemical mix from a minimal number of sources. I can't tell you how many, but it's probably less than a dozen. Because there's probably not enough product needs to be produced. But after that, everything else that you put in it is very much down to the individual producers. So we produce ours ourselves at our factory and bottle it there. So we can play around a little bit with what we put in it, and that's how we did it, you know, testing over sort of 6-7 months to come up with the product we now have.
Are they fundamentally similar?
I think what we got... I'm going to use one technical word here. Something called polysiloxanes. Which is what the ceramic element is. It's a polysiloxane. Don't ask me exactly what that is, but I know that's what they put in. So that product will be in all of them. And they'll all come up with nice little terms like nanotechnology and all. It has to be nanotechnology, otherwise it's never going to work. A polysiloxane is a bloody small thing. Therefore, it's nano. Is it technology? I guess so. For me, you're all putting ceramics on. The fundamental difference between a pro application one and then, for example, our Rokit spray-on ceramic is the fact that it's a very strong product, which when mistreated will cause you more problems than it's ever going to solve.
There may well be polysiloxane ceramic in many products. But it doesn't mean they're all the same.
No, it doesn't. And we have to be aware that to say it's ceramic, I believe you only need to have point something of a % of ceramic within the mixture. Now, in our retail product, we've only got a very small percentage of it because that is really effective for short-term protection. But where you want what we've got in terms of Ulti-Moto, which is a pro application, long-lasting, guaranteed product, you need to get quite a lot in there. And then stability is the big issue. So that's what we always talk about when we're bottling it, is how stable the product will be. And that's why I say we're as stable as you can be, but it is fundamentally, I know this sounds mad, but an unstable product. So unless you apply it correctly...
Well, you did say as well that once that bottle's opened...
You will get atomization, which goes to the crystallization that we were talking about when we atomize it. That will form little crystals around the rim of the bottle or just inside it. When you pour some more of it out, it's got those little crystals in. You go to put it on the bike and you've just scratched all the paintwork.
So we'll come back to that consumer product in a minute, but I do want to stress that this isn't an ad for Ulti-Moto, and I'd want to do some more testing of it before giving it a recommendation. Steve did put it on my GS's bodywork and it looks good, but I'm not able to compare that with anything. I wonder how many other brands will be willing to apply their products to painted test samples for a future video. And is that something you'd like to see? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, Ulti-Moto doesn't airbrush its ceramic on.
We hand apply everything in terms of the ceramic. We've tried airbrushing. The problem is, and the fact and why the ceramic works so well, is as soon as it makes contact with oxygen, it starts to cure. And ceramic by its very nature is a very hard product. So once you actually atomize it, it starts the curing process. So we found it pretty much just bounces back, or it's cured before it's got there, so it can cause misting on it, all sorts of issues. You've got to bear in mind, with our ceramic, originally it came with a 10-year warranty. But I then kind of reassessed that to get into real world biking. And the reality is that around fuel tanks and areas where your knees are touching, your stomach and everything else on the tank, you are gradually, with friction, possibly wearing it off. We feel 3 years is a fair length of time on that. So we're not saying at 3 years it's immediately going to fail. We're saying the likelihood is that you're going to benefit from a reapplication of the ceramic.
That's fair enough. So you could have said 10 years, but then when somebody says, well, it's worn out and tear, well, but that's wear and tear.
Yes.
All right, fair enough.
So we'd rather be realistic and live in the world of biking.
And when you get a professional ceramic coating done, you'll usually get a pack with some other products. Ulti-Moto supplies a cleaning spray, pH neutral shampoo and a bug remover. The company also sells it as a Total Protect bundle, which sees a specific corrosion protectant applied by them through a compressor and paint gun during the process. Then you're given a can of that rustproofer to maintain the protection over time. You also get a multi-purpose spray and a chain loop, which are actually rebranded XCP products. So, back to the Rokit ceramic spray that's based on the Ulti-Moto professional product, but is said to probably have less than 10% of the ceramic in. A pack with a ceramic spray, a ceramic bike wash shampoo, a rapid cleaner, sponge and 2 microfiber cloths costs $69.99. Or you can buy the ceramic spray on its own for $34.99. Now, I've always been sceptical of ceramic cones, and I want to do some testing of a selection of professional ones to find out how they compare, but the results of 2 consumer ones on my car's bonnet have swayed me. I've always rated the Jenolite Wax as it gives a really good, hard-wearing finish, but it is a pain to apply and it leaves white residue in all the panel gaps and edges, so it's really not ideal for bikes. It's a lot more work. After 6 months through a very hot August and a nasty winter, the Jenolite's still causing the water to bead well, but so is the Muc-Off ceramic. Now this kit costs £60 and you get a little 15ml bottle, which was enough for me to do the plates for the testing, the bonnet of the car and my push bike. Muc-Off says it lasts up to 2 years, so I doubt it's got as much ceramic in as the Ulti-Moto and other professional products, but it does work. It's fairly easy to put on with a little pad, but it still takes a little bit of effort. Now the Rokit ceramic spray didn't last as well. You can still see it's there, but really it gave about 4 good months of decent beading through some really nasty weather. Now that might sound disappointing, but I didn't keep it cleaned with a ceramic shampoo or rapid clean, which I claim to help maintain it, as I wanted to know what it could do on its own. All the car got was the occasional rinse off just with plain water. More importantly though, I've put it on 2 bikes, the bonnet of my car, poured a load out for material compatibility testing and done all of my wife's car, and there's still loads left. Helen's car looks fantastic with water beading really well, and the winter dirt as I film this after a few weeks seems to be shrugged off much more than normal. So, given how easy it is to use, how a little goes a long way and the quality of finish, I have no problem with spending the 5 or 10 minutes it takes to do my bike or car again with it after a clean. I reckon a single 35 quid bottle will easily be enough for 2 years of keeping on top of a bike and a car at least. So when this is gone, I'll definitely be buying some more. I haven't compared this to enough other products on the market, so I can't say it's the best, but I can recommend it based on this testing over 6 months. If this has been helpful, please do give it a like and make sure you subscribe for the upcoming aluminium test.